it was 100,000, and and they say that like there's been over 1,000 reported cases of cancer. It's literally 80% of the female population in Belarus has some form of thyroid cancer, and then other cancers are out there. But we did a meeting one day. Thank you, Pam. We did a meeting one day, and at that hospital, and there were 1,000 people in the room, and every one of them had a mask on, except for me. So it actually brings back kind of an interesting memory. We're starting something new today, and as I jump into this, I need to say a couple of things. What I'm doing today, there is not be any middle ground on this. You're either going to really like it or you're not going to like it at all. And I'm okay with that because I feel like this is what God wanted me to do. I do want to say that we have one visitor who used to attend church in this, and I want to say in this building, but I think this was the parking lot when Dick was here, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe there was a house here. But I just met Dick this morning, and he remembers Edith. It's been probably 65 years since this building was built 63 years ago, and he attended church here preceding this half of the building. So I think you used to have church over in the back room there, and that was the sanctuary. So we're glad to have Dick here. And Dick, this is not what we normally do for a sermon, just so you know, okay? Don't want you going home and telling everybody that was the craziest thing you ever saw. But we're going to start with Proverbs. We're going to spend some time in Proverbs. We're going to be, Zach and I are going to be breaking it down. There is no way to kind of preach through Proverbs chapter by chapter. It's not set up like that. Proverbs is great to read chapter by chapter every day. And in fact, I would challenge you during the time that we're doing this to maybe begin a habit that would be great if it were to be a lifelong habit. If you were to read the proverb of the day, today's the 19th, so you would read Proverbs 19. If you were to begin doing that and do it during the duration of the time that Zach and I are preaching out of Proverbs, you're going to get more out of that exercise than you'll get out of what we share from the pulpit, I have no doubt. God will meet you and he will speak to you. A person who has an understanding of the book of Proverbs literally has a master's degree in practical theology. You will grow more through the reading of Proverbs every day and the application of it than you would by attending any doctoral program in the country regarding personal theology and the way to live your life. And so I want to challenge you to do that. My favorite definition of wisdom, and there's several, but my favorite definition of wisdom is the right application of knowledge well obtained. So it literally means that all of the things that we learn, we apply it as correctly and as rightly as we possibly can. And that's literally what wisdom is. You've known people that do the one that they're like really, really smart, but they don't apply it to their own life, or they have bad common sense maybe. And you can't say that they're wise even though they're really, really smart. You know other people that are really, really interested in applying anything they know, but because they haven't put effort into knowing very much, their wisdom is limited there as well. And so it's kind of the idea of both. So you read through these, and as you grab a hold of them, you actually take the opportunity to apply them in your lives. And so we're going to be working through this today. And what I want to begin with is today is introductory. Today I want to literally talk about wisdom, and I want to give you something that I believe I'm giving it to you in such a way that I think that any one of us can refer back to this and go, I get it. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. When we talk next week, I plan to talk about wisdom in friendships and in close personal relationships. We'll be talking about wisdom regarding parenting and finances and all the different things that we can kind of see in here. And I think that what I'm doing today is going to be something that you'll remember well enough that you can put this into everything you have going forward. So I want to use the first 7 verses of Proverbs chapter 1 to kind of establish us on our path for today. So verse 1 is simply a greeting from Solomon. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Let me know who wrote these things and what he's got going on. And he says that these Proverbs are for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight. This is why I want you to read them every day. We'll be a great church no matter how bad the preaching is around here, no matter how silly we are with who we're rooting for in football, or how we feel about masks and no masks and things like that. We're going to be a great church if we're a church that reads wisdom writings and pays attention to them. So he wants us to do that. He wants us to pay attention to them that way. There. And we're already locked up. For receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair. As I tell you, wisdom is the application of gifts. Not only receive instruction, but you do what is right and just and fair. It's for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. These proverbs are for the simple-minded and the young, the less developed brains in the crowd, only because of their youth. And it's for everybody. Proverbs are literally for everybody. So we not only use them to take into our own lives, but we can teach them as well. It says, let the wise listen and add to their hearing, and let the discerning get guidance. If you're smart in thinking, you're going to admit that you don't know everything, and you're going to listen and get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and the riddles of the wise. Encouragement to just for all of us to do this. And then he brings us, those first 6 verses give us some insight into the Proverbs that I think is really important. We are responsible for the consequences of our decision making and the consequences of our self-directing ourselves through life. We're responsible for that. We play a part. We don't just put it all off on God. We don't blame it on him, and we don't think that he's going to just tug us along and bring us exactly where he wants us to go. He wants us to do our part. But verse 7 brings it back around. As we spend time in Proverbs, you're going to hear about Jesus, I think, but maybe in a different way. It's not going to be an altar call every week, because Proverbs are for us to figure out the right way to go and then to give us like encouragement to go there. But verse 7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. God is the one who will empower us in the end. In Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I believe that. And you know that I don't think that's what I can do. I can't fly jump over a tall building like Superman. Those aren't the all things that we can do. I can endure all suffering. I can survive the rigors of life. I can make my way through a pandemic. I can make my way through a pandemic that not only threatens us with illness, but has already set forward multiple dozens of ways for us to be angry at each other. But I need the Lord's strength to do it. So verse 7 puts God into the equation, okay? So that's the start. Now what I want us to think about are a couple of things. I want us to keep in mind a few things. You, every person in this room, is somebody that is someplace at some time with someone. You are not just doing the day. You're not just like, oh, I've got a routine. You are someplace at some time. And the time spot is important for you to think about. Your life from birth to death is a timeline. And you don't know how long it is. You really don't know how far it is. And you're someplace on that timeline. Remember, the post office used to have a thing that would, for whatever reason, at the post office, they had the life expectancy countdown thing. It it was just as a clock that was like, no matter how old you were, you could tell what your life expectancy was. And if you lived a day, it added like 2/3 of a day onto the end of it. You don't know where you are though. There's a car accident maybe waiting for one of us. There is the surprise of cancer waiting for some of us. There is nothing in the way of our timeline until we hit triple digits for some of us. And you don't know what it is, but you are on a journey somewhere. Your life is a story. And if you just go like, no, nothing is big, nothing makes any difference. I don't need to focus. I can run this by rote. You're going to be in trouble because you have already been launched. You are on your way through life and you have momentum and you are moving in a direction. And this is really important for you to consider when you think about what wisdom is and why we need to grab a hold of it. Even you young people, some of you are still kind of maybe in the barrel almost, where your parents are pointing, trying to point you in the right direction, and they're getting ready to pull the trigger and send you on your way. But we are all, excuse me, we are all, cancer, not COVID. We are all launched. We have momentum. Some of us, the momentum's barely going. It needs to speed up. Some of us, the direction is taking us in a bad place. There's a good thing for you to think about. If you don't change direction and momentum, put yourself 5 years ahead of where you are right now and say, what am I going to be at that point? Where am I going to be? Who am I going to be with? And so it's important for you to kind of have a hold of that. It's important for you to recognize as well that your moral compass is external, not internal. One of the big philosophies of the world these days are follow your heart. Stupid advice. I have never met anyone in my life, anyone who followed their heart that found what they were looking for. They always just find trouble. They find broken relationships. And most people are like, follow your heart. Well, I was married to her, but I decided to follow my heart. And I thought she would marry me too, but she didn't, or she did, and she was way worse than I thought she would. And it's just like following your heart is tragic in almost all cases. Your moral compass is an external compass. It's outside of you. It's not inside of you. You don't follow your heart. There is a true north in life. And these proverbs expose true north to you more than anything that you have in writing or in counseling or even in your relationships. Proverbs will expose true north to you. And so I want to encourage you to do that. So it's taken us to a good place, I think. And once again, lost track of this. So we're going to do one of my favorite things. This is a book called There's No Such Thing as a Dragon. I love this book. Some of you have been exposed to this, and some of you haven't. There's no doubt about it. I want to start here in the beginning, and it says, Billy Bixby was rather surprised when he woke up one morning and found a dragon in his room. It was a small dragon, about the size of a kitten. The dragon wagged its tail happily when Billy patted its head. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother. Billy went downstairs to tell his mother, and his mother said, there's no such thing as a dragon. And she said it like she meant it. So this takes us to this idea here. What do we know about dragons? We need to think about this for a minute. One of the first things I tell you is the dragon in Billy's room is friendly. In Western mythology and literary tradition, dragons are always mean and nasty, what I'm talking about here. In Eastern philosophy and literature, dragons are always things that come before something very good happens in your life. So the little tail wagging dragon, I don't know, but here's what we think about dragons. Stuff we know about dragons is they're big and they're scary and they're mean. They're terrible. They're reptilian. We've got a couple people in the church who really like reptiles, and all the rest of them think they're weird because who likes reptiles, really? They're terrifying looking, and they look slimy even if they're not, and they don't have teeth, and their eyes look like the devil, and that's a dragon, the reptilian. They breathe fire. We know that about dragons. They fly around Attacking wooden structures. Fire is great for wooden structures if that's what you're trying to destroy. And they hoard treasure. We know that about them. They're best fought by heroes, not by the common person. But what we really know about dragons mostly is what Billy's mother knows. There's no such thing as a dragon. They don't exist, right? That's good. Move on from that then. So go to the next page. Make sure where the next page is. Billy went back to his room and began to dress. The dragon came close to Billy and wagged its tail, but Billy didn't pat it. If there's no such thing as something, it's silly to pat it on the head. Okay, I want to tell you this right now. We're looking at the story, we can see the dragon. His mom says it's not there, and Billy's ignoring it now. If you have anybody in your life, including the person that you see when you look in the mirror, that is telling you that your fears and threats that you are experiencing in your life are not real, you know that that's not helpful. So I'm an encourager and I'm a counselor. And my favorite counseling advice is basically some form of just get over it. It's not that big of a deal, right? I tell people that all the time. And I really hope that every once in a while that sticks and somebody can just go, you're right, it's not real, and I need to just move on. It hardly ever works. Mostly we have to sit down and have coffee and start talking about what it is to face your dragons, what you're going to need to do to stand up and to do this on your own. But to just generally, with a shrug, just say, it's not real. You're not addressing the problem. And that's important. Proverbs 9:13 says that the woman of folly is boisterous. She's naive and knows nothing. It's a good proverb that just tells us to recognize the fact that if you're like loudly not paying attention to what's going on in your life, it's folly, and you're gonna come to nothing. You know nothing. Proverbs 12:23 says, "A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of the fool proclaims folly." And to just continually deny the reality of the dragon is going to be trouble for you. So Billy washed his face and his hands, and he went down to breakfast. The dragon went along. It was bigger now, almost the size of a dog. Here's the thing I want you to notice from this. Unattended dragons grow. They get bigger. When it's like a bill that originally starts out at a couple $100 and you just don't pay it. I've told you before, right, about the time I bought a stereo system with no money down for 90 days, and I had a great job. And so I was going to save my money. I had it figured out I could save $125 a week for 8 weeks, and I would be able to walk in and pay that entire stereo off. The only problem is when I bought that stereo from Fred Schmidt, and it was right next to where Sam's Club is now, when I was walking back out to my car, carrying that stereo in the middle of the winter, wearing nothing but sandals and shorts like I always did, I stepped into a pothole that was about that deep and filled with ice water and slush. Not only landed in there with my stereo, but I completely soaked myself. And by the time we got everything in the car and made sure nothing was ruined, unless I'd been outside in the cold for a long time. And then I went home, got the stereo hooked up, and went to sleep and woke up with quadruple pneumonia. And I missed work for more than a month. And I not only missed work for so long, I got fired from my job for not coming into work. I came back into work for one day because it's like, I got to get to work to pay for that stereo. And then I couldn't go back the next day because I came back early. And that was what they needed. I could miss all that work in a row and I couldn't do anything. If I had two times in a period, then now they could fire me. So they fired me. By the time I was done paying that $900 for that stereo, it was 12 years later. And the total cost that I paid, the amount of money that I paid to the Fred Schmidt debt collectors was over $7,000. That's what happens when you don't attend to little dragons. They grow. And that's what happens here. Prudent man in Proverbs 22:3. The prudent sees the evil, and he hides himself. But the naive go on and on and on and are punished by it. I think the message says on and on and on. Proverbs 27:12 says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and they pay the penalty. Unattended dragons will grow. Billy sat down at the table. The dragon sat down on the table. This sort of thing was not usually permitted, but there wasn't much Billy's mother could do about it. She had already said there was no such thing as a dragon, and if there's no such thing, you can't tell it to get off the table. Mother made some pancakes for Billy, but the dragon ate them all. Mother made some more, but the dragon ate those too. Mother kept making pancakes until she ran out of batter. Billy only got one of them, but he said that was all he really wanted anyway. Unattended dragons will use up your resources in life. Proverbs 21:20 says that there's a precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up. Unattended dragons will use up your resources. The dragons that exist in our lives, the things that are going on in our homes that aren't attended to, that are just lived with day after day, they end up taking up resources. This could be one of my examples this week is I had an acquaintance who is unable to get in to pay bail for his kid. And because of some different reasons, he couldn't do it. And so I had to help him arrange a new way to get his bail paid because he couldn't figure out how to do it and what was going on. His kid, and the raising of his kid, that was an unattended dragon for years and years and years. And now his boy is in his 30s, and he's still using his resources in life to take care of things that should have been dealt with 20 years earlier. Unattended dragons will always use resources. So, Billy went upstairs to brush his teeth. Mother started clearing the table. The dragon, who was quite as big as Mother by this time, made himself comfortable in the hall rug and went to sleep. By the time Billy came back downstairs, the dragon had grown so much that he filled the hall. Billy had to go around by way of the living room to get to where his mother was. I didn't know dragons grew so fast, said Billy. There's no such thing as a dragon, said his mother. Cleaning the downstairs took Mother all morning, while with the dragon in the way, and having to climb in and out of windows to get from room to room. I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions at this point about dragons. Have you ever been in a home that has dragons that don't exist? If you get away from the obvious and go towards the metaphorical here, you have, right? You've probably been in a lot of homes where there are just dragons everywhere and nobody's talking about it. Relationships are fractured and struggling, and love in families is limited because of what's going on. And I've been in homes where, again, extreme poverty rules the decision-making of the head of the family, the parents, and yet they don't admit to it. And so they're going on more vacations. You ever known anybody that's like calling you from Disneyland and they don't even have the money to get home? I know people who have done that. Their credit cards are denied. They didn't know it was going to be happening. What about your home? What about your life? Do you have dragons in your life? If you can care to admit to it, can you name any of the dragons in your life? By the time you get to the end of the story, you're going to see how important it is to name the dragons that you're ignoring in your life right now. It could be almost anything. I'll let the Spirit kind of speak to you about what these can be. By noon, the dragon filled the house. Its head hung out the front door, its tail hung out the back door. There wasn't a room in the house that didn't have some part of the dragon in it. It happens. You think, well, I'm protecting the children. They don't know what's going on. But when a dragon gets so big, every room in the house, even the room of the smallest of the children, have the dragon inside of it. turn it off and on, sorry. One of the things that I point out about that last image as well, the dragon sticking out, is others can see your non-existent dragon, even if you don't want to admit to it. It might be time to get some help. Proverbs 18:15 says, the mind of the prudent acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. And so this may be time for you to say, hey, people have hinted to me, they've said some things, I'm starting to figure it out myself, that it's time for me to seek knowledge. And I think you can do this in a lot of ways. I think by reading the Proverbs every day would help. I think sometimes we need to go to people and say, I'm recognizing that I have a dragon and I've denied it and its name is so-and-so. And I need help. I need accountability. I need advice. I need wisdom. I need help. When the dragon awoke from his nap, he was hungry. A bakery truck went by. The smell of fresh bread was more than the dragon could resist. The dragon ran down the street after the bakery truck. The house went along, of course, like the shell of a snail. The mailman was just coming up the path with some mail for the Bixbys when their house rushed past him and headed down the street. He chased the Bixby's house for a few blocks, but he couldn't catch it. When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, first thing he noticed was that the house was gone. It's one of the saddest parts of this story. When Dad came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was the house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. I think that probably about a third of the men that I know from across the street that come by the church looking for gift cards and things, the homeless guys, drugs and so many other things part of their life, about a third of those men were family men who once lived in a home with their wife and their children. And they came home one day to find out that their life was gone. And it's really, really sad. It's really sad. Not admitting that dragons exist can destroy a home and leave you searching for someone to blame. You just need to find blame. It's not my fault. Proverbs 25:8. Do not go out hastily to argue your case. Otherwise, what will you do in the end when your neighbor humiliates you? And the idea of just saying, it's not my fault. I did not know. All of a sudden, she just got mad one day. She was getting madder and more angry year after year after year. And you're just like, dragons don't do this. You need to be careful. It's not just dads. I mean, this could happen to anyone, right? It could happen to literally anyone. All right. Mr. Bixby got in his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove along. Finally, he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head, onto the porch roof, and through the upstairs window. Like Mr. Bixby in this one, he's looking at the dragon. He knows what he's climbing over. How did this happen, Mr. Bixby asked. It was the dragon, said Billy. There's no such thing, Mother started to say. There is a dragon, Billy insisted. A very big dragon. Billy patted the dragon on the head. I want to encourage you at this point to face your dragons. Proverbs 4:6-7 says, do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme. Therefore, get wisdom. Though it costs you all that you have, get understanding. Face your dragons. I really hope that just even thinking about this the way we're thinking about it today has given each one of us an opportunity. I prayed that the Spirit would speak to us about the dragons in our lives and our hearts today before I started this. That the things that we deny are a problem in our lives, that we just keep pushing through and just trying to get to Friday so we can have a break, so we can get back to Monday and start pushing through again. I want to encourage you. There's no better time than now to face your dragons. Some of you go, I'm old, and some of you go, my kids are grown, and some of you are thinking that my kids are already in third grade, it's too late. They've been launched. And one of the things I always say is that the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now, right? So it's time to get started. I want to encourage you to face your dragons, to seek wisdom, to name them. One of the ways that I would encourage you to do this is that if you're going to read through the Proverbs on a daily basis, I want you to name at least 3 of your dragons. And I want you to put them on a sticky note. And maybe put the most significant dragon first, second most significant dragon second, and then the third most significant third. And for the next month, as you read through the Proverbs, before you start to read, I want you to pray, Lord, show me any of these dragons where you're revealing something to me in these Proverbs. Whenever you find something that matches any one of those, and you will, every day you will, when you find something that matches those, meditate on it, think about it. Imagine what it would be like if you were great at this proverb. Imagine what it would be like if you were even worse at this proverb, right? But meditate on it, think about it, and pray and ask God to change you and to work with you there. And then at the end of the month, I want you to get another sticky note, and I want you to take the third one off, and I want you to add a new dragon to the top and move the top 2 down to the number 2 and 3, right? And so over the course of 4 months, we'll work through all of your first 3 dragons. And then if we need to put one back up there, just do. Do you know that I've got a little dragon that I do my very best to keep as small as I possibly can. But for literally 35 years of being a Christian, I have to ask God to challenge me to keep my mouth pure. Because I think saying things is fun. And I say stuff that I don't have any business saying. And so that one just keeps coming back up. And I leave it off for 9 months and it's really nice. But about the 3rd time I hear somebody in a week, or I don't even hear you guys, you don't say it because you're nice. You look at me like, do you have boundaries? And I'm like, it's got to go up there again. I've got that dragon that's getting out of control about I'll say anything I want to say just because I think it's funny. And so I have to be challenged on that. I have to face my dragons. You have to face yours. The dragon wagged its tail happily. Remember, Billy acknowledged it and patted it on the head. He wagged his tail happily. Then, even faster than it had grown, the dragon started to get smaller. Soon it was kitten size again. I don't mind dragons this size, said Mother. Why did it have to grow so big? I'm not sure, said Billy, but I think it just wanted to be noticed. Some final thoughts about your dragons. Things that you ignore have a very complex life of their own. I want to ask you to deal with it. Don't ignore it. And I think that this is why I want us to think about wisdom. This is why I'm using this as the introduction to the Proverbs. To talk about it this way. The Proverbs are only going to be beneficial to you if you are willing to look towards the things that you hate and fear, just dislike, and are willing to actually stand up to them and fight them, slay them, to get rid of them, deal with it. Why do all the stories of dragons contain the part where the dragon guards a great treasure? I want you to think about that for a little bit. There's always a treasure. It takes a hero to face up to the dragon, and it's oftentimes the dragon only has one small chink in the armor, and you remember the Smaug from Lord of the Rings, one little tiny spot, and it took the bard to make a great shot, and he hit it and it went right through his heart and it killed him. They have a very, very small area of defeat. But here's the deal. We have to face those dragons because they hoard a great treasure. Why do they hoard gold? Because the thing you most want to find is where you least want to look. I've got a quote from Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist. And he says, why would a dragon hoard gold? Because a dragon represents everything you're afraid of. What's embedded in everything you're afraid of? Absolutely everything you need to find. If you run from what you're afraid of, you're running from everything that you need to find. I want to encourage you to let the Proverbs speak to your heart, to speak to your life. Because despite the horror of the situation, you can do something about it. Every bit of wisdom you need is in the scriptures. And the Proverbs contains it in one verse chunks. You just have to find it. Every bit of strength you need is in the living word, in Jesus Christ. You can pray to him for the strength to face your demons. You can pray to him for the strength to go after what it is that's slowing you down. For some of us, we know that we have a dragon, and we kind of like it for whatever reason. It brings drama into our lives. It brings some sort, you know what we can do when we have a dragon that we're really not attending to? But we sort of know it's there. We can claim victimhood. It's not my fault. I'm a victim. My mom raised me this way. It's in my DNA. It's my skin color. It's whatever. I grew up poor. I hate to tell you this. Almost anything we use for victimization, if you spend just a little time overseas, almost anywhere, you'd be embarrassed at the things that we use to victimize ourselves with. But we like it. We really do. Remember when Jesus asked the guy at the water, he says, do you want to be well? And I remember when I preached about that about a year and a half ago, and I told you at the time that 80 to 90% of the people that are confronted with the question, do you want to be well? They may say yes, but they don't. They don't want to be well. Because being a victim is like, great. It excuses me for everything. But you know what? You have been launched. You are somebody that is someplace at some time with someone. And if you just live in your victim status, 31 years, you're either going to be dead or in the exact same place that you are right now. Victimhood nails you to the ground. And I want to just beg with you and plead with you that if you know your dragon, if you know what it is, fight it. Because what you need, what you most need, is the treasure that dragon is hoarding. I ask you just to go for it. Father God, as we close with the word of prayer, my prayer is fairly simple. I need to just plead, Lord God, that we would count on Jesus to not only reveal to us what we need to be about and where we need to go, but Father, that he would give us comfort and strength when we face up to the consequences of the decisions that we've made in life. When we look and recognize that we've got a dragon that has taken over too much of our life. My prayer, Father God, is that you would be glorified through a silly children's story today and through the wisdom of Solomon. Father, didn't mention at the start of this, but it's amazing. The book of Proverbs predates Greek critical thinking and Lord, the idea of insight by over 800 years. And it's just an amazing thing that thing has been floating around for that long. The words of wisdom in this book, and they're so applicable today. Lord, your word is alive. I pray that we find it in the next coming weeks as we focus in the wisdom writings of Solomon. Thank you for them. It's in Jesus' name that we